Well, we are halfway towards the 2016 season, mean either. We are now in round 10. Welcome to round 10 of Lachie's Weekly Footy Roundup for 2016. We'll be doing the usual, the results ladder and predictions for this round. The results and ladder were from the last round of round 9. Anyways, first game of the round, Hawthorn versus Sydney at the MCG. The Hawks. Well, they've seen their MCG winning. They've got their first loss at the cricket ground since round 1. Going down by 14 points. So let's look at the player stats. Best on the ground was Kurt Tippett with 19 disposals, 35 hitouts and 2 goals. Hawthorn's BOG next game was Jack Gunston with 18 disposals, 11 marks and 4 goals. If he's going to keep playing like this by the time he turns 34, I reckon Jack Gunston will be a great player for Hawthorn. Now let's look at the multiple goal kickers. Gunston was the only multiple goal kicker for Hawthorn. For the Swans, Gary Rowan kicked 3, Buddy Franklin with 3, Ben McGlynn with 2 and Kurt Tippett 2. It's kind of a bit of a low-scoring game here at the MCG. Same ground, next day. Collingwood and Geelong. Collingwood led all game. Well, they got to capitalise unlike the Crows last week. They got to capitalise on that game against Geelong. Joel Selwood, he had an absolute poor game. He was getting well tagged by Levi Greenwood. Still, Sidebottom happened to be Collingwood's best player in this game with 31 disposals and 5 tackles. Geelong's best on ground was Mitch Duncan with 25 disposals and a goal. Let's look at the multiple goal kickers in this game. Tom Hawkins was the only multiple goal kicker for Geelong. As for Collingwood, Pendlebury kicked 3, Jesse White with 2, Brodie Grundy 2, Alex Fasolo 2, and Mason Cox kicked 2. There was the game, there was not much ruck domination out there on the ground from Collingwood, but Geelong absolutely dominated in the ruck unit. Although Adam Treloar kicked 29 and had 29 disposals and kicked the goal. That was a great game for Collingwood. Except for the ruck, and they lost in the ruck contests. Gold Coast versus Adelaide at Metricon Stadium. More like Metricon Stadium. Well, it looks like Gold Coast chairman Tony Cochrane is absolutely fuming. The Suns have lost 6 in a row. Their best player was Nick Malcheski with 25 disposals and 461 metres gained. Dude's closing in on retirement. As for the Crows, Tex Walker, who was best on ground with 19 disposals, 9 marks and 5 goals. Let's look at the goal kickers. Multiple goal kickers. Peter Wright kicked 3 this game for Gold Coast. The other multiple goal kickers were Mitch McGovern and Wayne Malera with 3 each for the Crows. Tom Lynch kicked 2. Well, for the Suns, Brandon Matera kicked 2. Tom Lynch with 2. The other Tom Lynch with 2. And Jared Grant with 2. To avoid the confusion of Tom Lynch's in this matchup, as I called the Gold Coast Tom Lynch in this one, the other Tom Lynch. That was a poor result for the Gold Coast Suns. Port Adelaide versus West Coast at Adelaide Oval. Geez, the power came so close to getting the job done. But it was the Eagles. It would be the Eagles who would get up by 8 points. Scott Lysette was West Coast best on ground in this game. 23 hitouts, 13 disposals, 2 goals, and 11 tackles. while Nick Natanui had 48 hitouts that game. Well, it was total ruck domination for the Eagles. Port's best player this game was Aaron Young, 21 touches and 4 goals, continuing his great season. Once again, Port Adelaide will lose in the ruck contest. For them, well, they seriously need Paddy Ryder back next season. If they had Paddy Ryder, they'd be full force. If they want another ruckman, what about Todd Goldstein? Anyways, back to the multiple goal kickers. Josh Kennedy was 7 for the Eagles. Chad Wengard kicked 3 for the Power, and Charlie Dixon with 2. As also for West Coast, Jamie Cripps kicked 2. North Melbourne versus Carlton at Marvel Stadium, Etihad Stadium. The Kangaroos get up by 67 points. Another BOG game for Todd Goldstein. 19 hitouts, disposals, and 45 hitouts and 3 goals. He's a lock. He's definitely a lock for all Australian ruckmen this year. And his opponent in the ruck was Dandos Footy, with 7 hitouts and a goal and 13 disposals. Carlton's best player that game was Bryce Gibbs, 29 disposals and 2 points. For the multiple goal kickers, Lindsay Thomas kicked 3 for North, Jack Zeeble with 2, Jared Waite with 2, and Robin Nass with 2 for the Rose. Ben Brown kicked 2, and one of the last remaining players to be coached by Dennis Pagan, Boomer Harvey, kicked 2 goals. Well, the Blues have still had a few players who were coached by Dennis Pagan in this game. Mark Murphy and Kate Simpson. But also Bryce Gibbs. And probably also Andrew Walker. There's not many North Melbourne players who was coached by Pagan playing in this game. Only just Boomer Harvey and Drew Petrie. Can anyone stop North? They're too good. Anyways, to the other game, Fremantle and Richmond at Subiaco Oval. Richmond by 38 points. That's the 3rd year in a row they beat the Dockers in Perth. They got 2nd year in a row. The standout player for Freo in this game was Lachie Neale, 37 disposals and 9 tackles. Well, for Richmond, their best player was Trent Cotchin with 39 disposals and 7 tackles and 10 clearances, while wearing a helmet. Sean Grigg with 24 disposals and a goal. Let's look at the other goal kickers. Hayden Ballantyne kicked 3 for the Dockers. For Richmond, Jack Rewell, Anthony Miles, and Shane Edwards all kicked 2. Well, I reckon Dimmer Hardwick's pressure's coming down at the moment as coach. As for Fremantle, could it be time to potentially appoint Glenn Jakovic to be the team's new coach? Or maybe get Justin Lomier in. Meanwhile, at the MCG, Melbourne versus Brisbane. Melbourne by 63 points. Mitch Robinson. Well, my potential future 12 Rezzies teammate Robbo has had a great game, 24 disposals and 10 tackles. Jack Watts with 19 disposals, 10 marks and a goal for Melbourne. He's joint best on ground with Tom Bug with 31 disposals and 6 tackles. Christian Petrarca at 21 disposals and 4 behinds. If he converted those points to goals, he'd be top player in fantasy. Jesse Hogan, 20 disposals and 5 goals. James Harms, Let's look at the other goal kickers. Well, let's look at the multiple goal kickers in this match. Jesse Hogan with 5 for Melbourne. James Harms with 4. Jeff Garlett with 2. As for Brisbane, Tom Bell 3 and Ryan Lester 2. It seems this Melbourne team are actually starting to turn a corner. This is so far looking like their best season since 2010. They're getting closer to the finals than what you think. Meanwhile, in sandwich between the two Melbourne games, we got a game in Sydney. GWS versus Bulldogs. Oh my days, what a game from the Giants. There's only 2 Bulldogs who actually got in the hundreds in fantasy, which are Liam Pickens, 22 disposals and 289 metres gained. And Marcus Bontempelli, 32 touches and a point. GWS have absolutely dominated the stat sheet. Heath Shaw, 38 kicks, 14 marks, 1,125 metres gained. Get this man to 3 votes. Callum Ward, 30 disposals, 7 clearances. Stephen Canelio, 32 touches and a goal. It's been all Giants. Even Dylan Shiel and Lachie Whitfield impressed in this game for the Giants. Lachie Whitfield have picked up 8 tackles and 18 touches and a goal. Dylan Shiel with 27 disposals, 6 tackles and a goal. Toby Green kicked 3 this match. For the multiple goal kickers, 5 to Jeremy Cameron. 2 to Stevie J. He's looking like a great bargain buy since joining the Giants. While for the Bulldogs, Toby McLean, Lin Jong and Tory Dixon were their multiple goal kickers. The Dogs will need to get their act together for the game against Collingwood this week. Now for the last game of the round, St Kilda versus Essendon, Etihad Stadium. First half looked close and then the Saints totally dominated after half time to win by 46 points. It's been a great afternoon for Jack Stephen, 40 disposals and a goal. 37 and a goal for Seb Ross. 5 to Josh Bruce. Nick Rewalt with 24 disposals and 11 and 9 marks. Playing more as a midfielder this game. Multiple goal kickers. Tim Membry kicked 3 for the Saints. Paddy McCartan kicked 2. As for the Bombers, Mitch Brown kicked 4 and 2 to Joe Danaher. And I think that's about it for in round 9 to report. Let's look at the ladder. North Melbourne, they can't be beaten. 9 from 9. Well, let's see the women's team. If the women's team can learn from them in the future. They're top of the table still. Well, this could be a top destination for Lachlan Brown to go to in 2017. Second is Geelong, 7 and 2. Third is the Swannies, also. Third and fourth are the 2 Sydney clubs at 7 and 2. The Western Bulldogs are dropped to 5th with 6 and 3. Same record as West Coast and Hawthorn. The Adelaide Crows are 5 and 4. Sitting in 9th was Melbourne with a 5 and 4 record and just out of the final percentage. Port Adelaide are 4 and 5. While Collingwood and Carlton are in 11th and 12th with 4 and 5. Saints are 13, 3 and 6. Same with the Tigers and Gold Coast Suns. While Brisbane and Essendon are 1 and 8. The Dockers, they're done this season. They're 0 and 9. Pretty much their worst start to a year since 2001. Thank you. I suppose on my 2017 decision, Dad, I can imagine the first Melbourne team that would have pulled out of a race might have been someone like maybe North Melbourne.
Yes.
Anyways, back to the round 10 prediction.
Yeah, all right, man.
Sydney versus North Melbourne at the SCG. I reckon North Melbourne will lose their first game of the season. I'm going with Sydney in this one by a point. Brisbane versus Hawthorn at the Gabba. Sorry, Brisbane. I'm not picking you this week. Hawthorn by 72 points. It's obvious. I'm going with the Hawks in this match. Melbourne versus Port Adelaide at TIO Stadium. I reckon the Demons might get it done in an upset by 1 point. Saints and Dockers at Etihad. Saints, obviously, by 42. Bombers and Richmond at the MCG. Oh, please. I've got to go with Richmond by 52 points. Crows versus Giants at Adelaide Oval. Should be the game of the round. I reckon Adelaide will win this game because it's home ground. They got home ground advantage. I'm going with the Crows by 11 points. Even though GWS could potentially get up in an upset. Carlton and Geelong at Etihad Stadium. Surely I reckon the Cats will get up by 31 points. Collingwood and the Bulldogs at Etihad Stadium at the MCG. I reckon the Dogs will get up at the G by 41 points. West Coast versus Gold Coast at Subiaco. Eagles by 81. We'll be moving on to round 11 next episode.